morning, friends. Welcome to God Encounters. We are so glad that you're joining us today. Today, I have a very special guest, and I hope you invite as many people as you can and share this today because we have Marc Thielman, who's running for Oregon Governor candidate 2022. He was a superintendent, educator, policy expert, and problem solver. So thank you, Marc, for being here. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to let him just open up and start sharing his heart. So Marc is loved across the state of Oregon and nationally by people from all political backgrounds for his unifying leadership style, problem solving, acumen, and his steadfast principle of standing up to what's right, even in the face of adversity or political backlash. As superintendent of the All-C School District, Marc's fight against Oregon agenda-driven school closure and masking politics has made the national spotlight as he worked to restore personal property for all Oregonians during the last several years of unprecedented government overreach, which we've all felt. His advocacy for parents' and students' rights has yielded actual results in the fight for liberty. He fought to keep his rural school district open during the lockdowns, and his was the only district to provide critical in-person learning for students K through 12. His district's enrollment exploded 500%. Wow. He stood up for Oregon families to help them respond to forced masking when it harmed their students, providing options and pushing back on the governor's overreach. He's the chief petitioner in the School Choice Initiative, which offers a creative solution to expand learning options for Oregon students and attaches the money to the student. He's the only candidate to testify to the unelected bureaucrats at the Oregon Health Authority on their forced agenda of permanent indoor masking and masking all students. His school board put the masking decision back to the parents and sparked a statewide movement as many districts followed in opposition to the draconian and unscientific politicized policies. Oh my. So welcome to the show today, Marc.
Well, thanks for having me, Cheryl. It's good to be here.
Yeah. It's so nice to meet you. And I just want to personally thank you for what you are doing. We want to see change in Oregon. And so we need somebody like you bringing change. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So what do you want to share with us first? What's on your heart?
Well, just, the truth be told that, we are in a really historical and spiritual crossroads here in Oregon. And one of my prayers, as you know, was that when I started running for office and saw the enormity of the task and the level of vitriol that came out against myself and my family and people on the campaign and anyone that supported me, you really get a clear picture of just how real the spiritual battle between good and evil is. And good is defined by warriors or spiritual people like yourself who have love in their heart. And that love kind of dictates and guides them and causes them to have compassion even for their enemies, even for my enemies. And so the thing is that people are noticing that when I'm under attack, I react differently than differently than some of my other Republican opponents. And, and I'm slow to anger and I'm very gracious because if people are attacking me, it's usually because they're broken. It is not controversial to say that children belong to their parents, that there is a relationship between children and their parents that is part of the natural order. And natural order is defined by, before there was ever government, did children belong to their parents? Go way back to hunter-gatherer cave days. And the answer is so obviously yes, that, you really have to defy credulity. You have to literally say that 2 + 2 is 5 if you think it's otherwise, because what we have is we're up against political opponents who want everyone to believe that children belong to the community. They've written children's books to that effect. And, there's now billboards on the 205 in Portland by a progressive leftist organization imploring people to stop having children. You can't be loving, you can't care about our society, our community, and Mother Earth if you have children. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of their paradigm, their worldview. And the thing is, when we're talking about the continued opportunity for us to practice and worship as a church and as a Christian body and as a church body, and for people of any faith, all of that is under attack by these very people. Because what is one of the tenets in Genesis? Take dominion of the earth, steward it. Right. We are here to be good stewards of our resources. Go forth and multiply. Right. Have children. Engage in family. Families are sacred here in America, in Oregon, and in our culture. And families are important in every culture I've ever studied. And here we have people, academics, if you will, progressive leftists, who are literally defying the very natural order of our existence here on earth. And that is the very foundation of evil.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of change, and we really started seeing it in 2020. Things got a little crazy.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, I wrote a song you got to hear that, kind of highlights all those things. But, I was at that point going, am I crazy? As I'm watching the news going, these things used to be illegal. They used to be wrong, and now it's being embraced and almost, applauded that people are breaking into, family-owned businesses and people with small business, and nothing's happening. And I mean, and the riots, and just, it was just chaos. We were seeing chaos.
Well, yeah, and it's driven by very, very cunning people. These people are elitist. They want to be the ones that dictate right and wrong. And so they've defined right and wrong as whatever they disagree with is wrong, and whatever they agree with is right. And anyone who doesn't agree with them is the enemy and has to be destroyed, maligned, isolated, and exiled. It's no different than Joseph Stalin or Mao Zedong or Adolf Hitler. That's what all those dictators did. Yeah. There was one worldview that was accepted. And, that's why folks in Soviet Russia talked about the weather a lot, because that was the only safe subject. You could disagree about the weather, but you couldn't talk about the government. See? Wow. And, and these people here, it's good and evil is written into the soul of human existence, and we all have free will, and it's a choice. And so we have to always be cognizant. And that's why we have to keep love in our hearts. That's why we need to go to church and study the good book. That's why we have to talk about the fact that every citizen in this country and in this state, this great state of Oregon, we have an unspoken duty every day to get up and try to do better, just a little bit better than we did the day before, do right by ourselves, by our children, by our neighbors and friends, in our workplaces or places of work, and regarding the things that we're passionate about. These progressives say that's not your duty. Your duty is to comply. Your duty is to be part of whatever revolution or change we define. And we will tell you, we the elites will tell you what to value and what to believe in. And if you want safety, you will stay under the cloak of our paradigm and umbrella and our protection, or you will be attacked. And so it is a violation, if you will, of the tenets of our general American culture that says each individual is free to express themselves. That's the tenet of the First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, right. Freedom of press, freedom of assembly, redress of grievances, freedom of religion. Those are the five. And,
Right.
those things are not espoused or taught. And so I really want to implore, anyone watching your show, the battle is real. And we have an opportunity as a body of believers and as a body of patriots and as a body of people who believe that children belong to their parents to pick a Republican candidate. There's 19 of us running, but we need to pick a strong one, a grassroots one. And which, obviously, as you know, I'm very grassroots. I've received no big money from pharma, big corporations, or big oil. Every donation has been either through small businesses or individual donors. And it's humbling. It's amazing, the goodness of people and the recognition that my campaign has a different message. And it's a message of values and results. So as you know, I'm the only Republican person who pushes the when we request, what can people do for the campaign? As you know, I was the first and continue to say prayer. So I really want to ask everyone to pray for my campaign, pray for this mission, pray for our state, and recognize that we have a historical election coming up and we need to pick the right Republican candidate.
Yeah. And he's being kind right now, but the onslaught, I'm going to start crying again. It was really weird. When I first got him in the Zoom room, I started crying today, and it was just like a burden for him. So I just encourage you to pray for him and cover him. It's tough, I wouldn't be the first to tell you that this state is not a red state. Okay. It's a very blue state, but we want to see change in Oregon, folks, and it takes us stepping up and voting and seeing change happen, right? Getting godly leaders in place. When there's scripture about this. When there's not godly leaders in place, the people mourn, and we've been going through a lot of things in this state. I did, Pam Neighbor. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
So she said, thank you. She said, thank you, Marc, for the truth you bring to government. We appreciate your willingness to put yourself out there to speak truth and lead the way for others to follow. Thank you for standing through trial and enemy attack. And, she's committed to seeing you, come into office of governor, and we all are. We want to see that happen. She said, will you talk about Dorchester?
Sure. So Dorchester is coming up, and what it is it's kind of like the Conservative Country Club Conference, if you will. So it's out in Welch's, which is by Mount Hood. It's just beautiful out there, hence the country club analogy. And so it's they have a variety of activities and speakers that come in, and it's for people that are conservative to come out and kind of get energized, and it's an opportunity as well for some politicking and party politics stuff to go on, which is important if you want to have a vibrant party. Okay. And it's usually people like myself are invited to debate and be on stage by invitation only. So what was really, really energizing, I think, for our campaign is when the folks at Dorchester called us. It was right after the K2 qualifying scandal, in which K2 said they changed the rules. So I had qualified to be on the televised debate, and then they changed the rules to say, well, only if you have 750,000. And of course, that caused the faithful, especially those who support me, they completely tsunamied K2 and with calls and protests, and K2 eventually dropped the whole thing and said, no mas. And so it was right after that the folks at Dorchester said, hey, we need this guy on the debate stage. And so it was really humbling, because they called and said, we think that your presence will enrich and enhance the quality of the conference. So the good news is that's a big deal in the conservative world. Okay. Because I'm one of the few grassroots candidates that will be on the stage. I think I'm the only one, with some of the other more heavily funded competitors of ours. And the thing about it is too that I want people to understand is that I have the ultimate funder supporting my campaign, and that's God Almighty.
Amen.
And I'm running because God laid it heavily on my heart in a very clear fashion that I was to do so. I thought he was crazy. I said all of the human things that you say to an amazing God, probably kind of like Moses, Moses did that. I can't speak well. And God said, I'll give you Aaron and I'll give you the words. But I know better than not follow God's prompting. So I stuck myself out there, and God has not shied away from, one, protecting me, and two, also having me be exposed to just heavy, crazy attacks of all shapes, kinds, and forms, from Antifa to former disgruntled employees to people I hadn't seen in 12, 15 years coming out of the woodwork, and you really see the spiritual battle going on. And for me, that strengthens me. And because, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm standing firm in the fire, and I'm producing results. And I'm talking about issues that other candidates aren't talking about. It's about prayer. It's about restoring our churches. It's about, like I said, I defined freedom of religion very differently than any of my opponents. So they defined it as, each person gets to choose what faith they want to believe or not to believe. And that isn't the real definition. The real definition is the government can never, ever shut down your access to your church, ever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what freedom of religion really means. The government can't mandate a religion. They can't keep you from accessing your spiritual, food, if you will. And churches are a wonderful source of like-minded people getting together. And so what did the government do during COVID? What was the first thing they shut down?
Church. Yeah. Saying it's not essential, which is crazy. Really?
Yeah. It's insane. And it shows the fact that they have no love in their hearts for God. They have no love in their hearts for people. Now that, they were saying, well, we care about you. We want you to be safe. So we're going to declare church is not essential. But you see, it's all half truth, because they went to the pastors' associations and people in the diocese and the Catholic Church, et cetera, and Latter-day Saints and so on and so forth. And they went to all the various faith leaders and said, hey, we've got a big deal coming up, this pandemic potential, and we need you to help us keep people safe. And what do pastors do? Oh yeah, we want to help. Everybody wants people to be safe. And then they hammered down by closing churches. And what did it do? It divided us. It divided our pastor, our priests. It divided our churches, for those that closed, those that tried to stay open, those that wore a mask, those that didn't wear a mask.
Yeah.
And we as a Christian believing body have to be wise about this in the future. Never, always be able to discern when the government is speaking in half-truths. And the reason they do that is they seek to divide. And we can't be divided, not anymore. And so, lesson learned for all of us.
Yeah.
But it's time for the faithful to step up and vote boldly, and speak very directly, and stand in defense of their values and their right to worship God in any church they see fit to worship in.
Yeah.
And that's so important. So I hope, I don't want to belabor the point, but if you look at the data, evangelical and Christian people tend to vote about 4 out of 10 that are registered. It's one of the lower voting turnout pools. And that has a lot to do, I think, with the fact that, church is supposed to be separate from state. We don't get involved in politics. But that's not what the Bible says.
No.
The Bible says, render unto Caesar, which is Caesar, and God, which is God's. Well, the church belongs to God.
Right.
And therefore, we need to render unto God that which is God. And we need to defend our churches and our rights.
The church is people. We are the church, right? It's there's a building, but we the people, we make up the church. And so we have a voice. We need to be open about those things. And when you're talking about COVID and how churches were shut down and stuff, and the division, and to be honest, in the beginning, we wondered, is this even real? Is it real? okay, because we weren't getting COVID, and we're like, is this real? Is this fake? Is it? Until
Mhm.
some pastors started getting COVID, and then they're like,
Sure.
no, it's real, and then that was like a wake up right there in itself. And then when they start saying you can't sing in church, are you
Mhm.
kidding me? I mean,
Yep.
that's when I was like, whoa, okay, they've really overstepped their boundaries. I should have woke up before and I was just like, I don't know, it just all happened like you're just like it was just constantly every day. You didn't know what was going to happen. It was like every day something was different on the news. You're like, what? And you're watching in horror and then come to find out you're not really getting all the truth on the news anyway, as we all know now. Um, but we just sat back in horror going, oh my gosh, what is happening? But when I'm just so grateful for Sean Foyt, who said no to all of this stuff and, started going out. He started, I think, on the San Francisco Bridge, with worship
Mhm.
and just started saying, and it's crazy that you had to do worship as a protest.
Yeah. Well, and
That's
what's
willing
worse
to
is,
do it.
in Portland, the protests were supported by the government, massive
And California,
blobs of
because that's where
people
yeah,
in the
California, because
street,
that's where he's
sure.
from.
But you couldn't sing in church, but you could shout and scream and spit in a
And break
protest. And
people's
so,
property. Yeah.
yeah, well, it shows you the half truth and the hypocrisy that came from our government. If we elect ungodly people, if we elect people who do not have love in their hearts for every Oregon citizen, including the ones they don't agree with, that's the critical piece.
Yeah.
Anyone can agree, can show care to people that they agree with, but it's when you show love and deference and care to people you don't agree with
Yeah.
that really defines that. That's the separation that our faith professes.
Right.
And so we need to elect leaders that literally have love in their heart, that are strong, that stand in confidence about their convictions. And for me, I'm uniquely suited because I've been a school superintendent. I've taken on the government, and I've won multiple times. The government set an end to masking. As a direct result of the stance we took in Alcee School District, and that we had the truckers in Canada and other schools started chiming on, and then the students, high school students themselves, truly amazing. High school students themselves started saying in their high schools all over Oregon, walkouts, even in Washington, state of
Wow.
Washington. So, you could see it breaking open and people finally finding their feet and saying, no, we will be governed based on our consent,
Right. But
the consent of the government.
we had to push back against fear because what happened
Yeah.
is fear came in with COVID and that's how the control came in. And so all of a sudden, we've got this disease that we don't really know enough about. We just hear on the news everybody's dying from it. So you've got this fear of death and then the government telling you what you can and can't do and they're acting like they're doing this in your best interest. But so we had to really regain our footing and push back against fear, to move
Yep.
forward. So it was kind of crazy, you know. Um,
Well, the Bible says the spirit of fear will not serve you, and let's be real. We all have fears. I mean, we all do. We're all human. But I try not to dwell in fear.
yeah,
It's kind of like the old adage, panic isn't going to help you.
right.
But we all did,
Yeah,
we were all good-hearted, caring people who wanted to do the right thing. And
right.
at the time, we still had some confidence in our government. I think that confidence has been damaged significantly. And one of the reasons I'm running is so that I can be in a position to tell people of Oregon the truth, regardless of the issue. It is so critical that we in government tell people the truth. We give people good information
Yeah,
that they can verify on their own and say, yeah, this looks legit.
yeah,
And then they can use that information to make their own decisions. So we want to rule through people's having confidence in the information and then making the decision to collaborate for a common outcome, because that's the way our republic was set up, not by force and coercion.
so let me ask you a few questions. Tell us a little bit more of your background on education. So how long were you superintendent and all of that? Just give us a little
Well,
bit of.
I've been in education since 1994, and so getting up there now. And I've been a superintendent for probably going on 18, 19 years.
Okay.
And I was in Alsea School District for 11 years, very successful years there. It's a small school with charter school. So we were an open school, and we had a value of saying that we were the school of lost toys, if you will, a school of second chances, if you will. And so we had all kinds of kids that weren't being successful somewhere else that were coming to Alsea and finding success. So the very intrinsic value of that was tremendously rewarding. And then the strength of the confidence that parents had in our school really showed forth in COVID, because when we as a school board and administration made the decision that we would be open, we had so much confidence from our parent pool that even our concerned parents reached out. They didn't just start attacking us. They reached out, and we had real conversations about the issues and about the safety protocols and about, what we knew at the time. And
Yeah.
I think 98% of our kids showed up to school, and within about 5 or 6 days of being open, all of them were there.
That's great. And I want to encourage you too. Can you give us your website real quick where people can learn more about you?
Sure. So it's Marc with a C. C stands for conservative. So Marc with this Marc for Oregon, FOR. So marcfororegon.com. And I really encourage people to go. We're in a season right now where donations and funding is critical, because we're almost to the point where we can get our commercials out on the television, and that's kind of one of the expensive pieces. So if anybody finds a calling on their heart to give, no donation is too small, but we really want to encourage people to give, and give in proportion to the importance of the issue, which is the preservation of our freedom, our religious freedom, our personal freedom. It's really, really critical. And we have an amazing campaign, and again, we're the only campaign that hasn't raised $1 million that's polling in the top 3 Republican races, and it's just incredible, and it's amazing what God can do.
Yes. So, and you can see it behind him there on the sign. So marcfororegon.com, and Marc again is with a C, as you can see there. But I listened to a video that your wife did, and it really touched me. She said when she was with you and you would go to houses sometimes, you said no judgment before going in the house. And, that says a lot about you right there too, that, your heart is in the right place. If there's no judgment, and you're giving every person a chance, that's beautiful. I mean, Jesus saw the heart, right? He didn't look at the exterior. He said, don't look at, the outside, but it's the inside. You're looking at the heart and the person, who the person truly is. So that says a lot about you to me. I want to cover a couple other, so businesses downtown. If you were governor, what would you see to do differently for some of these businesses that have been so horribly attacked downtown?
Well, it's hard to believe we even have to talk about this. Well, the first thing we need to do is reestablish accountability. See, one of the tenets of love is accountability.
Good.
Okay. We love our children, so at times we discipline them. Okay. And they may not feel like we love them in the moment of discipline. We all know that.
Right.
And that's why we have accountability. And what we have is a political party, the Progressive Democrats, who want to remove all forms of accountability. And then they malign those who are charged with enforcing the law and providing the accountability. They funded DA elections so that they get their leftist DAs in there who purposely say, I will not enforce the law. And what has been the fruits of that? We know someone's heart. We know someone's, the expression of someone's values through the fruit of their work. And what we've seen is complete chaos and deterioration of the quality of life, especially in downtown Portland. Yeah. So we have to get back to enforcing the law. And then we have to be sure that we have leaders that go to the people and continue to explain to people real definitions for real terms. This is what accountability looks like. Here's why we have laws that are shaped the way they are. Here's why we need to hold people accountable when they destroy or break somebody's private business.
Right.
You know, the Antifa went through downtown Portland at the heart of the riots, the time of the riots, and they told businesses, if you do not have a Black Lives Matter sign in your window, we will smash and loot. Now, you know what, that is no different than Hitler's brown shirts or the Stalin rounding up people with the KGB and sending them to the gulags.
Wow.
Ready? You don't have freedom of expression. You will do what we want or else. And that is the mentality of our current governor, Mike Schmidt, the DA in Multnomah County, and people like Ted Wheeler in the Portland City Council. They all ought to be very ashamed of themselves, because what was the inevitable result? Small business closed, 200 plus businesses downtown are gone, some that were open for over a century. And then the whole base of the market, people don't go out like they used to downtown at night, because it's a zombie apocalypse of homeless and crime and hard drugs.
Yeah,
that's what's going on downtown.
Yeah.
And then we strip the ability of police to address the issue. So people can camp almost anywhere. They can camp literally right up next to the doorway of a business. Well, a lot of, regular people don't feel safe going into those businesses if they have to walk around homeless tents. So just the very act of allowing this and not providing accountability is harming good people in business. And this political party doesn't seem to care, aka these progressive Democrats that have been in power for almost 40 years. It's time for them to go. So I'm going to do some really critical things. One of the things is I'm going to give all cities and counties and municipalities 60 days to designate areas for homeless people to camp. And this is how you get around the state or the Ninth Circuit Boise decision that said that you cannot tell people they can't camp somewhere if they're homeless unless you have a designated area for them to go. So that's something that came out of our liberal Ninth Circuit. And so here's how this works. Once you designate a place for people to camp, I'm going to say there will be no sheltered camping anywhere except designated areas. See, it's the same rule that you have for camping in state parks. Okay, right. So we're going to apply that same rule to homeless people. Right. And what that means is you don't get to cover yourself with a tarp. You don't get to pitch a tent on the side of the highway. You have to go to a designated area, or you got to sleep in the open air. And then we let the Mother Nature and weather create incentives for people to go to those designated areas. And when they get there, we'll have access to them. And then we can start to get data on them and try to get them the help that they need, and hopefully shrink this homeless problem. The other thing that we need to do is to stop enabling them, which is what that camping rule supports. And then for those who won't get help, those who want to live this lifestyle, there's a beautiful place called the state of California or Seattle that would be more than happy to have them. And I will be happy to provide a bus ticket for them. And that's called accountability, and that's acting in love. Right. It is not love to let people live in squalor and grow their addictions and deteriorate their minds and undermine their dignity. That is not love.
Yeah. I live in Multnomah County, and I will say there are a lot of old motor homes along the sides of the road in different places. And I try to walk my neighborhood, when the weather's decent. And I've watched, there's one in particular, it would move. It would stay a few days and then it would move to another block and, that kind of thing. And then now it's, I think, on a main street right now. But I mean, it is a problem. And I know that the Wapato jail was turned into, thank God for James Autry pushing for that. And I think there's more beds going in there. But how much would my question to you is, there's a lot of mental illness out there. Yeah. And, I know some of it's drugs and that kind of thing. Some is just people have been down on their luck. But, Portland really does make a way. Oregon really does help people in need, for finances, if that's the kind of case. But what would you say the percentages of mentally ill people that are homeless?
Oh, it's probably upwards between 15 and 25%.
Okay.
It's not the majority, but it is a disproportionately high percentage.
Okay.
Schizophrenia, bipolar, some, delusional, hallucinative types of conditions are
Yeah.
fairly common. And you see that, a lot of people see that when, the person's talking to the air, and in their mind, they're talking to something they see. And,
Right.
but, the thing is, a lot of those conditions can be helped with the proper treatment and the proper supports. And, and those folks, a lot of those folks will, take drugs to treat those things, self-medicate, so to speak. So
Right.
it's wrong to let them live in squalor. It's wrong to not show compassion, to just idly walk by folks who are hurting and struggling and act like they don't exist, which is what happens at the Multnomah County Courthouse. I mean, the place is boarded up like a third world country.
Yeah.
There's a plywood tunnel that people walk into to get to the front of the building.
Yeah.
And they've completely normalized it. They've even, stapled artwork to the barricades. And it is the complete wrong approach. The wrong approach is that you impose law and order, and you have real action and supports for people who have needs, and you do not enable the very problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And this legislature just authorized $600 and something prepaid cards for anybody who's homeless. Well, if drugs are illegal and the majority of people are using drugs, and you give them taxpayer dollars in a prepaid card, I wonder how much of that money is going to go to buying and purchasing drugs.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets me is you can't say we oppose human trafficking, we oppose drug addiction, we oppose illegal cartel grows. You can't say we oppose all that and then act the way that this government is acting. Say it's a half truth, it's a lie.
That's crazy. Pam was asking, have you experienced support from churches in Multnomah? And how about Washington and Clackamas counties?
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of support for churches in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington, more than I could have ever imagined.
Right.
And it's really just a body of people who see it, just like you talked about. They see the motorhomes, they see the tents, they see the squalor, and then they realize, hey, 20 years ago we didn't have this problem. What's going on? This is a government caused problem. This is a result of government moving away from accountability, law and order, commonly understood definitions of terms, okay, and into an erosion of accountability where anything goes, and you're not allowed to say it's not okay to have drug needles on the playground at the city park.
Right.
Because if you say that, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you don't have love in your heart. No, on the contrary, it takes love to hold people accountable. The old days, they called it tough love, but that's really not what it is, right? It's discernment. It's the same discernment that parents use to support their children as they grow up, and they do it out of love so that the child will grow up to be a successful and capable and contributing citizen, because that's the ultimate expression of a parent's investment, is their child going out and standing on their own 2 feet and starting a life for themselves based on what that child's indices are, what their passions are, what they want to do for their, in their world and their career, and how many children they want to have. All that gets to be defined by the individual.
Kim has a question for you. She said, what can be done to keep our streets user-friendly, quit taking away lanes in town for bike lanes, etc.? We are losing parking spots as well, and Oregon highway folks are seeming to put tolls on our highways. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that one either.
Well, this is all of that is a part, it's been a long time coming, but all that is a part of Agenda 2030. People can look it up. It is a Marxist globalist agenda. It's supported by Governor Brown, former President Barack Obama, and many world elites and leaders, Bill Gates, etc. And what it says is it says that, we just got to stop driving all these cars. So what they do is then they force in bike lanes, they force in bus lanes, and they make car travel less desirable. The reality of it, though, is, unless you live right near those bike lanes or you live right near those bus lanes, The car is the most practical means of getting around still.
Right.
And so you can see the mess it creates. And then they want to shame people. I mean, these are the same people who said, start driving high mileage cars 20 years ago. Everybody started driving high mileage cars. Then they criticized people because high mileage cars use less fuel and they were getting less money in gas tax. This government is incapable of solving problems. Okay, they should have been rewarding people and saying, thank you for using fewer gallons of gas. And instead they said, we're not making enough money, so here come the tolls.
Yeah.
So you see the hypocrisy of it. So
Yeah.
I stand in opposition to all of that. We need to let local governments and the market of people, decide what kind of road infrastructure we need, if we need more lanes or not, if we need max train. And there are areas where mass transit improvements and things, there are areas where that makes sense and that where it's needed and wanted. But if people think that we're going to have a max train that goes from Portland to Aurora or Canby, that kind of investment doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense economically. It doesn't make sense culturally. And it would be building a train in which that few people, if any, rode.
Right.
And so this is why we can't let political ideology be the determinant of our infrastructure. We have to let markets, actual people living their lives, creating demand, and letting that demand dictate where government goes in terms of infrastructure improvements and what kind of infrastructure to build.
Yeah. Real quick, shortly, briefly, law enforcement. What can you tell us about law enforcement and your
Well,
views?
law enforcement is critical, and so what this particular government has done is they just recently secured surveillance contracts through some large data firms. So that Governor Brown is happy to surveil people through cameras and linking private security systems in buildings to a government system that takes data on everybody and does facial recognition. So they'll know you were in Nordstrom on this date, et cetera, without your knowledge. But they don't want to fund police, and they don't want to hold individual citizens accountable. And this is what's kind of nefarious and scary, because this is the exact approach that the Chinese government does or has taken that eventually enslaved the Uyghurs. And we need to stand in opposition to that. So what we need is old-fashioned community police that are funded and supported and are part of local communities. And we need to have accountability being administered. So we need to restore the right to address illegal drug or illicit drug use. And then we need to actually have the action when it comes to getting people the supports they need on the homeless side or the mental health side. And notice this government has done a lot of talking and a lot of removal of accountability, but no follow through on the actions that they promised they would give in support of that removal of accountability.
Right.
So right now we had to they're now paying police officers 6-figure salaries in Portland to not quit.
Right. I mean, it's pretty bad when there's a billboard hiring for the law enforcement. Oh my goodness.
It's an expression of failure of policy. But you see, with progressives, they never take accountability for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. See? And it's always systemic racism or some kind of systemic bigotry, or you see what I mean? So the fact that they put the billboard out and they don't see the obvious, that billboard itself is an expression of the failure of their policy.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Oh, Lord.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. All right. Environmental. What?
Yeah.
I hear you're fierce on that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have to apply good science, I mean, I've done forestry research and I've done fishery stuff. And back in my young days, I'm a biology major, science guy coming out of college, biology and history. That was quite a combination. And I both have been incredibly useful. And so I have some authority to talk about the fact that when I was doing forestry research, I could very well see the fact that our forests and human behavior was a relationship. And that not only could we harvest and harness and engage in our natural resources, but we could also keep them vibrant and productive for other animals and species, in the interim between harvest time on trees, et cetera. And so my views changed from kind of any kind of commercial stuff being bad for the forest to, hey, wait a minute, there's a relationship here that we have to steward.
Right.
And so what we have is we have forests that have accumulated fuels because the government went in and shut everything down. It created huge hardship for humans. And notice the spotted owl has not recovered. The spotted frog has not recovered because the government was remiss in actually solving these problems and doing the work that needed to be done. So what happened is everybody lost on every front, including endangered species, if you will.
Right.
So we have to change the way we do that. So we need to give access to our natural resources to regular average citizens, both for recreation and for resource management. And then we need to educate people on why thinning our forests is good and why management of our forests helps keep communities from burning down. And it actually is better for climate because we're not spewing all that carbon dioxide every year in catastrophic wildfire up into the air.
Right.
And the thing is, everywhere I've gone, even vehemently liberal people who are, radical environmentalists, once I engage in this kind of conversation, it's amazing how they come to common ground. So stewardship is critical. And we have to get away from the concept of, it's either all exploitation or no access, because everyone loses in those two realms. Let's get back to stewardship. Let's do common sense management. Let's apply real science.
Yeah.
And then let's let individual people who have a passion for, maybe doing a hatchery box if they own waterfront, let's allow them to do that when right now regulations don't. Why not? We'll have more fish. Yeah. We'll have better resources. We'll have more people connected to our resources.
My husband's a fisherman, and he hasn't been very successful bringing one in lately. But there's been I don't know, it's not real like it used to be, as far as the amount of fish and things like that. But I wanted to say, you were talking about the environment. So I worked 17 and a half years for Blunt Incorporated Oregon Cutting Systems, which is saw chain, bars for chainsaws, sprockets, accessories. So they build all those things. And really, we've seen a decline in a lot of that, but, then they got really more creative for even, pruning, shears, things like that for, and then if there's a catastrophe somewhere or a hurricane or whatever, they would send teams out to support there and stuff. But yeah, cutting back the forest and then, replanting, just to keep the environment, thriving. We've got to stay on top of, clear cutting and then also replanting. So to keep the forest growing and, that helps with the atmosphere, helps with a lot of things. And yes, even the endangered species and things are going to benefit from that, So,
well, when you lock forests up and they become overgrown, they produce less food for elk, deer, and other important species. So we have been seeing in many regions of the state population declines in those. And of course, hunters are noticing. And so, we want to keep things vibrant. We want to keep people engaged with natural systems, and we want to manage them responsibly in a way that maintains their productivity in balance with the productivity in terms of food source and species diversity for the very animals that we all know and love and cherish that are part of our culture, like elk and deer and bear and cougar and wolves and coyotes and raccoons and, so on and so forth. Not only can we do this, but the data, the research is abundantly clear that it is the best way forward at creating unity between historically opposing groups, between loggers, for example, and environmentalists. That there actually is a lot of unity that can be had when you have a conversation like we're having regarding stewardship, where you need both loggers and environmental lenses to be applied. Right. And what you'll find is that everybody will thrive.
Balance, right? In everything. Yeah. Definitely. Well, let's see. What else can we cover here? We've got about 7 minutes. left. What else did you want to share?
Well, in terms of education, that's a big one for me. And as a school superintendent who stood up to government and never implemented the CRT or the comprehensive sex education or the social emotional learning malarkey, I stood against that. Unfortunately, I had the support of my school board and the confidence of my parents in that. And what it created was a school that was open and accepting. And so this is why we need to elect the right candidate going into the general election on the Republican side of the ticket. And that's I just feel real strongly with that it's our time for a body of believers to step up and get engaged. And the other issue too, I think the thing that really separates me, I'm going to be on Lars Larson later today, not too far from now.
Awesome.
And one of the things I'm going to talk about is that I'm going to be real clear. I am the candidate who will talk about election integrity in the general election. And my goal and focus will be to make Tina Kotek or Tobias Reed on the far left, or Betsy Johnson, who's running as an independent, former Democrat, career politician. I'm going to make them talk about it, because we have so many people in this state who really want their vote to matter, and not just Republicans, Democrats and Republicans. And therefore, we have to have the courage to talk about it. And I'm really disappointed in Christine Drazen and Bud Pierce, who are supposed front runners, who are well funded. And they were just recently in the Willamette Week, talking out both sides of their mouths on election integrity. They're saying that unequivocally Joe Biden won the election, and that basically there's no voter fraud. However, they support Trump's agenda and would accept his endorsement. Now, how do you do that? How do you say that? The issue isn't, was there fraud? Okay. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
The issue is there a large body of people who have low confidence that their vote matters? The answer is unequivocally yes. That is what I'm talking about. Yeah. And we need to talk about it. And we need to have safeguards in place. We need to talk about the issue so that we can restore confidence for all of our citizens in the sanctity of their vote and the integrity of our elections.
Yes.
And it is a must issue. It must be discussed in the general election. And what we get is we get all these national advisors saying, don't do that because it's too divisive, because once you get to the general, you're going to want to move over to the middle and so get the swing vote. Well, I got news for everybody. That hasn't worked for 40 years. Okay.
Right.
And so here's how we win this. We win this by telling the truth.
Right.
By talking about real issues that concern people and taking the slings and arrows that come and modeling for people how to stand in the fire. And people respect that even if they don't agree with you. I can't tell you how many people, well, you said it before we got on.
Yeah.
Just that you see all the slings and arrows I take. Yeah. And yet I get up every morning and I'm gracious. Well, that's called statesmanship. That's leadership. See, that's no judgment.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want to say, that, Democrats used to be, our parents were Democrats. Okay. And it was different back then. And so then I even kind of slid over. I was bipartisan for a while, but I'm telling you folks, as a Christian and those values, I can't vote anything other than Republican right now. There's no other way to spell it. If you look at biblical truth and how to live and how to vote, you can't be anything other. I'm sorry, I don't see any other way. But the thing is, I've actually been a little paranoid, to be honest, to even put Republican. Is my vote going to get counted? Okay. Am I going to get attacked if and I'm going to do some canvassing. I stepped up to the bat, I'm getting my brave girl clothes on. I'm like, I'm going to do some canvassing. But it's like, because I'm in Multnomah County, and it's not, it's not real red here, just saying. But it's like, I'm almost, and I asked somebody when I signed up to do that, I'm like, should I still be Republican? Is it safe to say I'm Republican, or should I be bipartisan and just vote Republican? But, I think it takes a strong party, right? We've got to stand up and start being stronger as a party to make a difference, right? Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. And the thing is, we can reestablish balance in our government, and we can only do that by voting for a conservative. Betsy Johnson is she's a more moderate Democrat. She is not going to move the dial back into a place of balance in our society and our government. Oregon is not as blue as people assume.
No.
At the very worst case, it's purple. What I've experienced, even in Multnomah County, is a massive movement towards red. And I can say that because so many Democrats are working on my campaign and my volunteer team, or have reached out to the campaign to say, I just switched to Republican, Mark, so I can vote for you. I mean, that is the best praise I could ever ask for.
Yes.
And what's so great about it is it doesn't feed my sense of ego. It keeps me focused and humble. That is a humbling thing when someone says, I'm taking these risks, I'm changing my affiliation because I believe in the message that you're selling.
That's
and
huge.
all that means is I've got to keep working. I've got to stay focused because I don't want to let any of those people down.
That's huge. Unfortunately, we've ran out of time. I so appreciate your time today, Mark. And so I want to encourage you all, please check him out. Go to his website, markfororegon.com. Again, Mark is with a C, as you can see behind him there. Read about him, all the things that he's done. Pray for him. He really covets your prayers. He needs them big time right now. We're just moving in and gaining momentum as we go. And praise God for the work you're doing, Mark. And so, friends, I thank you for your time today. Share this so we can get more people on Mark's side. And until we see you on the next God Encounters, stay blessed.